Okay. Well, what is this? Tuesday? Happy Tuesday, everybody. It was a travel day for me yesterday because I'm lazy. I'm lazy, and I kind of took it easy. Decided not to drive back on Sunday, and then just recovering. But I'm back. I'm back from ShireCon. ShireCon, it's a really small con, but I've had a lot of fun each time, and it's right in my wheelhouse. Easy for me, very convenient for me to get to. So always fun. Let's see where there's to start. Well, I got to meet Jason from the Jason what RPG Nerds Variety podcast. Jason of that fame, but I've talked to him online before. I think I've been on his. Have I been on his pod? He's been on here at least once before, but never met him in person. So it was always fun to meet him in person. Also met, I think it's what, Merc the Meek. I think it was another podcaster. Met them up there. That was fun talking to them. Obviously, Daniel Bandits Keep was there. A bunch of other folks were there. Played some games. Did a lot of kind of talking and hanging out. Yeah, Nerds RPG Variety Cast. Thanks, Mr. Hobbs, for for correcting me. It's a bit of a mouthful of a name, and I'm always have to think a little bit about the order of terms within the name. But it was a good time. They changed locations. They changed locations, I guess, each year. So I've been going. This is my third year, and they keep having to change locations. Not their fault. They find a place. Hey, we like it a lot, and then I think this last place they had. So last year it was in. Well, the first year I went, it was in a church. It may still be a church, but it's kind of a church, and I think some kind of children's theater. It actually was really quaint and cute, but for whatever reason they couldn't get it for last year. Maybe it wasn't big enough. I don't know all the ins and outs. Um, but it was moved to another location, which was. And by the way, I'm forgetting the guy's name who organizes it, but he's real. I think I mentioned this on my pre-stream. He's really organized, and I shouldn't forget his name, but I did. Really organized. And so if you're ever curious about coming, follow the Facebook group. He posts in there, and you really get a lot of the info. He's not. It's very transparent, kind of what's going on. Tom Wilson, thanks. Mr. Hobbs got all the information. Why am I hosting this, Mr. Hobbs? I should just have you take over. Yes. Tom organizes everything. He everything's on point from an organizational standpoint. You could not ask for somebody to be kind of more organized, transparent, all that stuff you want to hear organizing it. They were supposed to be in a there was in a theater last year, which is pretty cool. And a lot of these little towns, really, and you find in places like New York City too. Maybe you've found it um, as well. They take a movie theater and movies, depending, are not doing that great, and they'll turn it into a theater, kind of a community space in the town where I stay up there, where Studio B is located. They've done the same thing. Their original kind of theater is now more of an event space. They actually have a more modern movie theater, but their original movie theater is now kind of an event space as well. So this happened. So they put it in there, and it was pretty nice. The rooms, at least one of the rooms, was pretty echoey. I think that just happens with all these spaces, and it was true for where they held it this year. But otherwise, it was kind of a nice space. It was neat in the middle of this little downtown, little Main Street area. Great, but then kind of at the last minute, they wanted to raise the rates and charge a whole bunch extra. So Tom had to reconfigure. I think he had to move the dates slightly and find a new place. And they found a spot which is in the same general neighborhood. All these places are in the same general area, a VFW, which was a kind of a cool location. Plenty of space. They had an outdoor area. They had I don't know what the deal is exactly. I've never really been in a VFW before. I don't know, but they had like a little outdoor kind of kitchen thing set up, and so they had someone. I don't know if it was someone who always does supplies food for the VFW or a vendor who came in there. In any case, kind of doing food and drinks, and there's plenty of space, and the weather was actually wonderful. It was cloudy, but we didn't get all the rain from the hurricane. And those of you affected by the hurricane, hope you and yours are doing well. The extent, I know it was raining in New York City the whole weekend from the hurricane, but I guess we were either far enough away or maybe the intervening hills and whatnot blocked out the rains. So it was really more about. It was cloudy, but the weather-wise, temperature-wise, it was gorgeous, and so it was a really nice location. Of course, it's kind of a neat spot to be playing role playing games inside of VFW. They had a full size tank out front. I think I took a picture of it and posted it somewhere. They had a whole. There were two floors, and the top floor is just a big room, filled with tables, and there was a little bar to one side, and then the lower floor also had some tables, but it also had. I don't think I took any pictures of this. It had a display cases around two of the walls that had memorabilia going from maybe even pre World War One, World War Two on up, and stuff from both sides. So there was captured World War I Prussian, German helmets and things, and of course there was Nazi memorabilia, but not celebrating Nazis. More celebrating the takedown of Nazis, but also uniforms from soldiers and caps and jackets and guns and mortar shells and all kinds of neat stuff down there. It was interesting because there was definitely some of the they have this is a, I mean again, I haven't really been in any VFWs, but this is kind of a it's not like it's nice if you look at it from the outside. Ooh, this is a nice building, but when you just kind of sitting there, like, wow, this is a pretty nice VFW in terms of kind of amenities and stuff. They had the big outdoor area. They had a whole bunch of these horseshoe things for playing horseshoes. They had like a little band kind of stage. And in fact, I think on Saturday, someone was out there. I don't know if they had asked them to come play or they were just practicing out there or whatever. They had an outdoor bar that was it was kind of a split level sort of thing. So that where the top floor overhung past where the second floor ended, that had another little bar down there. And there's definitely some of the VFW kind of regulars hanging out. Which always made me feel a little bit, you know, weird, like I was trespassing slightly. But all in all, a really cool location and spot. And I think it's sort of underrated having food and drink on there, and it was pretty good. It was actually better than I expected. Got hot dogs, hamburgers. They had breakfast stuff, and I think Tom had mentioned, hey, they're here for us, basically specifically. So please, use that, right. Buy food from them. I bought, I think, at least two meals out of the ones I was there from them, so I felt pretty good about that. Um, so I got there. So when the first ShireCon I went to, they basically had pre-ShireCon the night before, where you could kind of come to the event space, hang out a little bit, but nothing formally was going on. Then the next year they said, well, we're going to have a evening session. So basically they opened up things at 5:30 or 6 with kind of one evening session, and then you're playing. And then this time now they've opened it up to I think the first game was at 1 o'clock on the Friday. I'm not. This is an interesting kind of schedule. The 1 day to 1.5. It was like 1 day, then we had 1 day plus. Now they're doing 1.5 days. It's pretty interesting. I don't know if they'd ever move it to a Saturday, Sunday, as opposed to Friday, Saturday. I guess it really depends. People are starting to come from different areas. Jason was coming from, I think, Virginia, so not a short drive. I don't know if it makes more sense at some point for them to do, hey, Saturday and then half a day Sunday instead of half a day Friday. I'm not sure. For me, I drove up actually Thursday after Daniel's game. I drove into the city, which was a mistake. Was a mistake. A bit of a, I wouldn't say a mistake, but I don't want to get sidetracked. But the traffic in the part of Manhattan where Daniel hosts his game is irritating on the best of circumstances, and I caught a bunch of traffic. I got caught behind a fire truck, and so just getting in there, I ended up being late because it just I don't like being late. It was kind of a nightmare, and but then I drove up at night afterwards, which I don't always love. I'm not super big on the night driving. Sometimes you got to do it, and once you get out of the city, it's a pretty easy drive up into the country, I guess. But that wasn't necessary. But anyway, basically for me, the Friday took Friday off, so for me now, once I'm up in the country, I was just 20 minutes away from the place. So it was super easy. I don't know for other folks if it's more difficult getting there on the Friday or not. I didn't have a game for Friday at 1 o'clock. I was just kind of um, hanging around, sort of talking to folks. Daniel, I think, got stuck, so he was actually late. I was talking to Jason a bit, and we're like, oh, I wonder where Daniel is. I'm like, I don't know. I guess he'll make it or he won't make it. I think he's either playing in a game or running in a game at 5:30. We're like, and I think he made it. He got there right around 5:30. Yeah. Mercurius says that DM Bloodworth of Unscripted Unchained was there. Yeah, I talked to him for a couple minutes. The usual suspects were there in terms of folks you may or may not expect to be at ShireCon. And the first game I played, the I was saying Sunday, the Friday evening game with the 5:30 game was a war game. So one of the things is I was very late at picking games. So I didn't have the choices of maybe some of the things I would have liked to have played in. Like Jason on Saturday ran this 70s Hobbit Smaug, Lonely Mountain board game that Daniel and a few others played, and I would have liked to have played in that, but I just didn't. I didn't get in on time, so I was a little bit limited because of my lack of forethought in picking things. But this seemed interesting. I one of the things I did was I tried to pick things I was really interested in. When I go to a con, and not that I've been to a ton now, but I've been to more than a couple at this point. I'm always looking for either is someone running the game that I'm really interested in, or is it something I'm really looking forward to? And for me, it's not even role playing games. Whatever is out there, whatever the offerings are, I'm looking for. Ooh, is it? Do I know this person, or have I heard something about them that they're oh, the way they run BX is super interesting. Okay, that might pick my interest, or just something different, or to me, right? Something I haven't experienced is someone's running. So that's kind of where I was in picking. So the things I picked to play was this game that I played Friday evening, which was, I think it was called the Battle of Emerity Meadows war game, miniatures war game. I played in a Traveler, Mongoose second edition Traveler game. I played a game Hero Quest. I'd never played Hero Quest before. I'd always wanted to play it, never played it, played that one. And then ended up playing, because one of the guys I was playing Hero Quest with had a game that they're working on, sort of a skirmish game called Ragtag Defenders. I played that, and then other than that, I was hanging around. And for me, that's a good mix. It's not too much gaming. You could pick. There were 2 slots on Friday, right? There are, I think, 3 slots on Saturday, 3 or 4, might be 3 slots. And of course, I'm sure there are people who just pick, and they do a pretty good job, I think, of giving some kind of gap in between the sessions. So one will end around, assuming you end on time, right, at 12, and then maybe the next one is at 1, so you have a chance to go get something to eat, and they do raffles and things. But to me, that's kind of a lot. And I think by the time it's Saturday evening, I'm starting to get kind of just spent. Um, so I find it's a nice mix. So the first game I played, Battle of Emerity Meadows. If that name sounds vaguely familiar, apparently it's a battle that was spoken of that's part of the background to the Temple of Elemental Evil. This takes place in Greyhawk, and it's when these forces of chaos are arrayed against the forces of good or law. The forces of law beat the forces of chaos, I think, in the story. The forces of law win, and then I guess the aftermath of that battle ends up the forces of chaos, I guess, have to go back, lick their wounds, and then you get Temple of Elemental Evil, I think, arises out of that. It's a pretty interesting game. It was I don't know the name of the system. I think I took a picture of it somewhere, but I don't know where it is. I'll look. If I find it, I will share it. It's it's a system that I guess is in alpha or beta. It's a work in progress. It's not a system that's published. Pretty easy. I thought it was pretty easy to play. You had control points, and you'd roll for your control points, and you'd have commanders on the field who you had to be within a certain radius. Everything's using flexible tape measures, so everything's being measured. You're not on squares, but you're using kind of tape measures to move everybody. So you can command as many units as you have control points, and then of course you have movement and whatnot. And we had one spell which I think was Insect Swarm, ended up being our spell, and I guess from a mechanical standpoint, I think the system worked fairly well. The thing I was disappointed with the system, well, there are 2 things, and one's kind of a double-edged sword, I know, but it was actually kind of hard to eliminate units. Now, the forces of good, I guess I keep saying good, maybe it is good. I don't remember in Greyhawk whether it's kind of good and evil, right? Elemental evil. So the good guys, which I was one of the good guys, your forces are way outnumbered. The forces of evil have way more. And this, I guess, is based on, that's literally the description of the units in the story, has, this amount of folks on the evil side, this amount of folks on the good side. Hold on, I need a sip here of Mandarin Polar Seltzer for the working man. All right, you got good versus evil. The good guys are outnumbered. the he did give us, and I guess this is also historical too, that at some point we could kind of surprise with some elven archers, which were our only. We had no other missile forces. It was just these archers we could kind of bring them out of these woods. So the I guess the battlefield basically woods on one side, a river on the other, and then a ravine that kind of cuts through the middle. It doesn't go all the way across the battlefield, but there's only a little on the side that the river's on. Then this kind of chasm clips in, and there's one little bridge that goes across the chasm. So it kind of like looks like almost a B shape, if you will, kind of looking at the battlefield. It's hard to get forces off. So you roll the most you can do. You can't immediately eliminate a force. I think you can break them, and if they're broken, then they can become eliminated. It's just the upshot was that it felt like hard to get forces off the field. And when you might think, well, you're the forces of good, you're outnumbered, so it's probably good that your forces can't get off. It's hard to get forces off the field. Now I would say yes, but it was also pretty harder than we expected once we got into it, to get some of the evil forces off the field, which is kind of imperative for us as the good guys. For example, one of the things they have, and I'm not sure where this came from, but there are orcs on the evil side, and the orcs were automatically run at the elves. They see elves on the side of the battlefield, they must just run at them. And you don't even have any, you have no, and he was thinking about afterwards, he was mentioning that, well, maybe the guy who's running it, who's creating the game, whose name I can't remember either, was saying, well, I might tweak that a bit. But basically, they're to give them maybe an option to try and have them not charge. But they got to charge ahead, which for the forces of good, this is kind of great because you can set up sort of your elves here and dangle them as a little bit of a lure, and then the orcs come down, and then you can kind of smash. We had cavalry. That was kind of the thing we had. Well, we set it up where we had these two wings like here, and they came down against the elves, and just by the way they were moving and everything, they kind of end up in line, and we got them from both flanks. And we ended up getting rid of most of them, but it was not the kind of decisive action I think that at least I was hoping for. And I remember being disappointed about that was maybe the other thing, right? It was hard to get them off because you didn't get there were not very many instant eliminations. And then the flanking to me was not strong enough. I wanted there to be more decisive results from flanks, and there weren't. And I think if you had a couple of those things, if maybe it was a little bit more decisive, or even you just build that into something like flanking or attacking from behind or whatnot, it really had more of a chance to destroy rather than having to go through multiple phases. Because if they're broken, they're not really, they can still do things, just not as well, but they can still do things. And then you can spend command points at the end of your turn to kind of unbreak them or roll to see if they're unbroken. Anyway, you could have kind of some of your units kind of fluctuating. Oh, they're broken. Now they're not broken. Oh, they're broken again. And when you're on the good side, you really want to get rid of those as much as possible. Sometimes I think it was frustrating. Obviously, there's dice involved and other things happening, but it was like, we just can't get these guys off the field. Even when I thought, hey, we made a good move. Hey, Terrence, we did a good move. We got this whole flanking action. And I was like, oh, the flanking really doesn't really do much. So I was maybe a little bit disappointed with that aspect of it. Obviously, if we knew the game better, we could probably plan for it a little bit better. And the referee mentioned kind of, well, we could have brought our archers in to a different area and made better use of them, which is probably true. Because the big thing with this game, it ends up being you want to keep your units together, because units that are touching each other form essentially blocks that can be commanded with one command point. So if you have 6 units of archers all touching, then you can command them with one. They become one unit basically for you to command. Whereas if they get separated, which they can be when they start getting broken and they start retreating, they don't retreat all together. You start breaking them up into their individual units. I guess I know I should think of another. Shouldn't be choosing unit for everything. In any case, once they get broken up, then if you had 6 single units of archers together in one block, you can move them all together, right? Once they become broken, let's say into 6 single units of archers, then you need 6 command points to command them all. So that's kind of a big deal. But I didn't find that for the most part. I found for the most part we had command points to spare. Now the other part of it is you need these commanders on the field. They give you your command points, and you also need to be close enough to units to be able to command them. There's a command radius. And that was an element I think we missed, that the referee pointed out, well, if you took out their they put some of their command units in jeopardy, and if you took them out, then that really reduces their ability to move all their units, because you can only move as many units as you have command points. And so if you're down half your command points, then suddenly you don't, you have all these units and you can't move them. And that's definitely something I think we would keep in mind. Though I'm not sure if it would have. I'm wondering if it would have helped us as much, because once you get in kind of close, we just didn't have a lot of room for error. But again, it was our first time. They also had a dragon on the field, and it was cool, and it was really, really, really powerful unit. And I might want to tweak the way the dragons worked, or maybe not. I don't know. So we have this dragon on the field, and the rule with the dragon is they can choose to stay in the air or they can land. Right? If they stay in the air, then if you don't have missile, any kind of ranged units, I should say, then there's no way to hurt. You can't hurt them. And the other thing is, so you just keep them airborne, and well, we have no missile weapons, so we can't possibly hurt them. It actually took them a while to get the dragon out, which is funny, because knowing that we had no ranged units on the field, I would have just pushed that dragon up the field as fast as possible. We can't stop it. We can't stop it. Now, what you can do is you can take one of your named. We had several named. Those are the commanders, kind of named PC types. You could take the named PC types and challenge the dragon. Right? I challenge you to a duel. But the dragon can refuse. Now, if the dragon refuses, there's some kind of morale, and units within so much radius of the dragon, get to take a morale hit. But what they figured out quickly was, well, we just won't have any of our units near the dragon. So the dragon will go around, and we brought our hero up. We're like, aha, we challenge you. And the dragon's like, nope, sorry, no. And then oh, okay, we don't have any units within 2 inches or whatever it was. I think they actually used centimeters. Okay, so we can't do anything about it, right? And then once we brought in our ranged archers, we had something, but it's still really easy to just keep the dragon on the other side of the field from the archers. I'm not sure ultimately if we could have played differently. We ran out of time essentially to complete the scenario, and we had done pretty well if you'd looked at how many units we'd lost versus how many units they'd lost. We'd done much better, but I think the tide was probably going to turn on us, and the referee kind of said as much. He felt like the other side was going to win, which I probably agree with. We might have had to get lucky, and we still had that dragon over there that we couldn't stop. That could just fly around one side of the battlefield, ignore any attempts uh, to challenge it to a duel, and our ranged units just couldn't fire over there. And then maybe at the end you fly it over, but at that point it probably would have been toast. I'm not sure what we could have done. I mean, I'm sure we could have done things differently, but that part of it, understanding what the dragon can do and just saying, okay, well, the dragon's here, and we're just going to keep him away. And then we'll just keep him away from our other troops, and we'll keep him away from your ranged weapons, and he's just going to cause havoc over here, and we'll just ignore any attempts to duel. And then if you bring your hero close enough to duel, we probably could just turn and wipe out your hero, which they never did, interestingly enough, and I'm kind of surprised. Now, I don't remember how strong the attack of the dragon was. I think we actually, at one point, no, we lost one unit to the dragon. I don't remember exactly. They did not use as much as they could, but I didn't get to see the stats exactly for the dragon because we didn't have it. I wasn't using D&D stats exactly, but I don't know. But it still was a fun exercise. I've never played one of those before. I think maybe I know towards the end I was getting a little bit tired, and I just was. I think I was maybe ready for it to end maybe a bit faster than it did. I think I would have. I think maybe for me, if I'm going to play that kind of game, I want to play it maybe earlier in the day or when I'm fresher, so that sometimes I don't know if you ever play this, but you ever play Axis and Allies and you start it, or a game like that, and you just kind of start it late. You don't realize you're starting it late, but then you start it at 8 p.m. and then you're into the final part of the game, but now it's 11 p.m. and everyone's just kind of like, and there's one person who's maybe still kind of on it, and they're probably going to win because people are just not paying as much attention as they were at the beginning because it's gotten late. That's kind of how I felt. I felt I was a little bit at the end of this thing, where I was a little bit like, okay, I'm kind of ready. I'm ready. It's not really the fault of the system. I think it's one of those things that if I could play it again, it's like, yeah, let's play this one at 12:30 or 1 o'clock when I'm fresh as a daisy, and maybe not 6 p.m. That where you get to kind of that 9 p.m. mark, I'm starting to tire a little bit. But it was a lot of fun. It was cool. I like the idea is kind of neat of playing out these historical D&D scenario was part of fun. Like, for the history of Greyhawk, we present the Battle of Emerald Meadows. And so we know what happened in the story, and now a little bit like, hey, can you replicate what they did? Well, the answer of could we replicate what the heroes of good did in history? And the answer is no, we could not. And that was Friday. That was Friday. In between, talking to Jason, talking to Daniel a bit. That was Friday. Saturday, I had a bright and early game of Traveler at 9 a.m. We are playing and before I forget, so I got to talk to these folks a little bit. Brian from Hexed Press, from whom I bought, if you saw, his book, Domains and Dominion, as well as his kind of a little additional zine on medieval mercenaries. Really nice guys. I also I don't. Oh, where's the other one? Hold on, because I had actually talked to the other fellow before. Where's my? Hold on a minute. Where is it? Here. Yeah. Also, let's see. Where is my? So Ian from You Can Breathe Now Games also had these, and I got to talk to them a lot Friday and Saturday, which is fun. I didn't have a chance, if I had thought about it more, I would have tried to get these read before we showed up. But he had a bunch of these zines, and then the die, which is just a, is 1 in 6 chance. So, and they're hand painted, really cool. Obviously you can see I haven't taken it out of the plastic yet. And anyway, I bring this up because Brian, again from Hexed Press, he ran through the Traveler. He was running the Traveler. He's a huge fan of Traveler, and so he was running it. And I was really excited about that because I'd not played a Traveler before. And anyway, I think I have 2 box sets of Traveler, but I've never played it. So we played this. The scenario playthrough, I want to say, is called Shadow. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Shadows. Apparently, it's a classic scenario. I'm just looking here. So Shadows. Yep. So it's called Shadows, and it was used as the Traveler tournament at Winter War in 1980. It's a pretty interesting little. So I think that Brian, I think, ran it very well, and I can understand why he chose. I think the reason why he chose it is that he's looking at people like me who never played Traveler before, but maybe more used to kind of D&D type games, which I certainly am. And I think the idea here was to give you something where you could kind of use your sort of D&D, what you know from D&D, to your, what you know from D&D, and kind of apply that more to a Traveler scenario than you might in some other ones. And I think that this Shadow scenario does that very well, because essentially it's a dungeon crawl. What it is you end up being, and there's like a backstory. Basically, you're trying to get off world, and I forget if you're trying to get off world and there's an earthquake, or there's an earthquake and then you're trying to get off world. In either case, as you're trying to get off world, this earthquake has caused the emergence of some kind of very ancient pyramid complex, which would be great, except for the fact that the largest pyramid has some kind of laser turret on the top of it, and it starts shooting things down. So you quickly land your ship before you get shot down, and realizing that, my gosh, we need to try to shut off this laser turret thing, or we're never going to get out of here. And so the scenario is, okay, you need to investigate this pyramid complex, figure out what's powering or whatever's causing this laser turret thing, and turn it off, which is great. So you're approaching it. The background, obviously, the technology, everything you have is sci-fi Traveler, but in terms of maybe your player skills. If you're decent at dungeon crawling, if you have, then you're probably going to do pretty well. All your dungeon crawling things that you've learned, if you're playing D&D or whatever game, are going to serve you well in this kind of scenario. The only thing from my standpoint is that I kind of wanted some of the other stuff because it's Traveler, right? I know that the Traveler has rules for all stuff because you do engage with it. Traveler's not just about doing one thing like flying in space or doing whatever. It's about all kinds of stuff. But it was kind of a double-edged sword for me, in that the thing that I think was good for helping me get situated, i.e., putting me in a familiar situation, albeit in a different universe and whatnot, also meant that it was not as much of a different thing as maybe I was hoping for. So I feel like I still want a Traveler game where I'm doing something like in a ship at a spaceport, doing things at least I associate my brain with Traveler more than doing a dungeon. That said, it was a lot of fun, and the there was an interesting resource. There was even more, in a sense, more of a resource crunch in Traveler than I could see, or at least that struck me, than in kind of an OSR game. So the air in this planet was corrosive, so we had to wear vac suits. This was a big deal because we only had very limited gear. And I thought was nice is Brian says, okay, here's all the gear you have in your ship. What stuff are you taking with you? And you start to think about things. Okay, what are we taking with us? Right. And this is not we can't take everything with us. But then we also want to think strategically of, okay, if we take everything that we can with us and a character dies, then we might, depending on how they die, the circumstances, we might lose a whole bunch of stuff. Because we might have a secondary PCs because our ship had more people on it than our player count. Therefore, if someone dies, someone else from the ship can come and take their place, right? Well, if we take all the equipment, then any second PCs that come up will have nothing. Like, we'll have no backups. We take all the rope with us, or whatever they called. I think it was called like a personal cable or personal line, something like that. We take it all, then maybe we need more. We're stuck. Or the one that I thought was really interesting was the concepts of the vac suit and the vac tape. So we're all wearing these vac suits because the air is corrosive. This adds a whole new wrinkle to everything you're doing, because any kind of slip up you do, it's not even about, oops, I slipped and took a hit point of damage, womp womp, right? You might think, well, that's no big deal. Right? That's just a hit point of damage. Who cares? But you care because any damage means you've torn your vac suit. And if you've torn your vac suit, you need to spend 1 unit of vac tape to seal your vac suit again. And if you only have 2 units of vac tape, well, then you're going to die even on 1 hit point of damage if you've already used your 2 units of vac tape and you get hit again, or you got to hope somebody else lends you there. It's very easy to die even from something you think like, well, that's no big deal. So it adds a lot of tension to kind of anything you're doing, because it's not just about how much hit points you can take, but that equipment standpoint, which I thought was a really fascinating thing. And I remember he was saying that, well, if you fall, maybe you crack your visor, and if you need to seal your visor with vac tape, now suddenly you're blind. So then you're down vac tape, your things are already done, and now you can't see, and there's no way to fix the fact that you can't see. You're blind, and then you're blind. Either you get replaced, you say I can't go on, get somebody else, or now you're blind. Right? It adds a really interesting extra level of kind of resource management. For example, I was goofy. We were checking these kind of. They had a couple of like nooks that were covered. You could pick them up, and I just got sloppy, and I didn't really plan. I just opened one because we'd opened a few, and I just got I definitely got complacent. Like, oh, I opened it, and there was some little amphibian in there, and he spat in my face, kind of like the critter and was it the little lizard in Jurassic Park. And I had to use, or he didn't spit on my face, but he spit somewhere, and I had to use one of my vac tapes to seal it, and I was just cursing myself, like, I was stupid. I let my guard down, and now I'm down a vac tape on something dumb. So now, I felt like, well, I don't have any room to be dumb again. All right, I've used that up. Thankfully, we went through. We were pretty darn careful. We didn't. I feel like we almost didn't play it. I don't want to say play it like a con game, right? But I think it's oftentimes when you get into games at a con or a one shot, there can be a little bit of a, I don't say emphasis, but there can be this idea of just doing something, even though it's a bit goofy. It's something you wouldn't do in a home game, in a campaign game, but you do it in a one shot because what the hell, oh, there's something in this hole. Oh, I'll reach my hand in, right? If you were playing a campaign game with characters you probably want to live, you might not just reach your hand in. But in a con game, you might just go, what the heck, reach our hand in, right? And then of course, whatever happens to your hand, and ha ha, it's a con game, right? Ha ha ha. Well, we didn't really do, didn't do this. So there were definitely occasions where and I don't know, I haven't read through the module yet. I don't know what we missed, where we might, if we played it more loosey goosey, or just more by the seat of our pants, maybe we would have had more misadventure, or we would have found other things. We did. We played it pretty darn tight. We were checking out rooms. We're not ducking our heads under platforms to see what's scrambling around the dark. Oh, there are things swimming in the goo. We're gonna nope, not touching that goo. Closing the door full of goo. Yep. Oh, there's this. Nope. We're backing away. We stayed really kind of on point to try to get this thing solved and survive. So we did. I have to say, I got to give credit to whoever that original designer was. I don't think it says here. Oh, it says there's a picture here. Does this picture say who it's by? No. Why is that picture so small? In any case, you felt alien, right? It was supposed to feel like an alien complex, and it felt like an alien complex. I think they did a nice job. Everything was tubes and domes, and they had platforms at different heights, and they had chambers of goo, and they had this whole reptilian vibe to it. And one of the guys we were playing with was familiar with Traveler in the broad sense. They hadn't played it in years and years, but they kind of knew a bit of the lore. So he was like, there are no reptilian, right, kind of races in Traveler, right? And Brian the ref was like, no, there aren't. This is unusual, right? So it's like, oh, okay, this is pretty neat. And there were definitely nods to them being reptilian creatures, and I thought it was really cool. And we got through it kind of in the time. Didn't make any big goofs. I think the biggest goof was probably me and that stupid toad or whatever that spat at me. And we made it through with minimal accidents, and it was fun. Like I said, the only thing for me personally was, man, I would have liked. I'm not even sure how you would do it. I'm trying to think. Like, I don't know enough about Traveler to know kind of what would be the great mix of, okay, some stuff for to get people comfortable, and then stuff to really sort of dive more into Traveler, or and whatever get kind of really heighten the sci-fi part of it without that you can do in the time frame. I'm not sure. I don't have an answer. For that, but it was a lot of fun. So we did that. So that was Traveler, and that was Saturday morning. And then after Traveler was Hero Quest. Hero Quest is an older game, board game, kind of D&D light, very much so. You're running around a dungeon. I guess the cool thing with Hero Quest, I think most people, I think Hero Quest was pretty popular back then. I feel like I'm maybe more in the minority of people who've never come across never sort of played Hero Quest or got involved with it. It's got a central board, and the board has a bunch of rooms on it and a couple of hallways that crisscross, and that's always the board. Hey, Neon Glitch. That is the board. The board's the board. But what they'll do is scenarios will modify the board. It doesn't work 100% well. It's a little bit weird because sometimes they'll make rooms like, oh, this is and a couple times happened in our game, oh, this is a multi-chamber room. In other words, they took two areas that are printed as separate rooms on the map and turn it into one room, which is fine, but they don't. Whereas you had little miniature pieces to represent doors, which I thought was really cool, and represent things like, oh, here's a bookshelf. So they actually have a bookshelf model figurine that's all put down. Oh, they got the thing. Of course, the bad guy, all the enemies there are minis for and stuff. So you really flat board, and then you populate it with all the stuff, which is cool. But with those rooms becoming all of a sudden it's a multi-room, they don't give you anything to cover up the floor line. So each of the little rooms on the board has different colors, and there's a little line to indicate there's the wall, and you just kind of have to remember. And a couple times I sort of lost the fact. I was like, I thought I was in two separate rooms. Like, no, this is one room, because they said it was a multi-room, but then there's not really a way to indicate that on the board. I don't know if there's any way around it other than having some little strip that you put across, like a black piece to put over the wall to show that it is not a singular room anymore. The game is super simple. It was just two of us. I played a what did I play? I played the barbarian and an elf, and the other gentleman played the wizard and the dwarf. Wizard and the dwarf. So it was a good mix of melee and magic. And this other guy had new hero quests, and I was giving me good advice, and I was very open about, hey, I'm not sure, like who should I take, right? What which spells? Is because the elf, it's kind of a neat system. So I think they had 4 decks of magic, which I think one for each element. So there's water, fire, air, and earth. And I guess the elf gets to pick one deck, and basically the wizard takes the other 3. So the wizard has a lot more magic than the elf. It's kind of a neat way of doing it. Okay, so I ended up with air magic. I think I had sleep and a couple other spells. The sleep didn't work as well as in D&D, and I had to read it, and I was like, oh, this is not D&D sleeper. It puts everybody to sleep. No, it puts potentially puts one thing to sleep. But it's very easy and really easy to get into the rhythm. Okay, you move, you move, you move, you move. Right? Oh, you move and act. And then the person, we had, referee was running us through it, and so we just had an order. So I think it was barbarian, then dwarf, then elf, then magic user in turn order, and we could just do things. And if there were no enemies in the room, he'd kind of let us reset and do things. Some of it is interesting, I guess. So you can search for different things, but if there's no enemies in the room, I'm not sure. It seems a weird thing. So you end up having to, I guess what I mean is you're in a room, some goblins are in the room. Okay, so you go down, you hit the goblins down. Now, once the room is empty, or I guess it doesn't even have to be empty. You could do things like I search for traps, I search for secret doors, I search for treasures. I think are the things you can do. But if there's nobody in the room with you, you might as well. It's just there's no rolls. I think if you find a trap, there's a roll to disarm the trap, unless you're the dwarf. Other than that, there's nothing to roll. So it's just kind of like, I just feel like if you empty the room, just give treasure. You know, almost, or do something. It's just a little bit of a weird thing. Especially, it would make more sense to me a little bit if there was a clock or enemies were moving outside, so that because the idea is you're spending turns. I'm the elf. I'm going to spend the elf's turn instead of moving and opening doors to search for traps or search for treasure or search for secret doors. That would make more. It would make more sense as an action if there were enemies and things moving. But and maybe I know the Hero Quest. Maybe there's some other way of playing where there's more of like a ticking clock kind of thing, or you only have so many turns or whatever. Because anytime you search for treasure, you just get one. And then it's just a matter of, are there secret doors? It was kind of obvious, at least in this scenario, because you just get to a dead end. You're like, oh, okay, there must be a secret door here, because it's a pretty linear. This scenario is a pretty linear path. It's just, you just kind of follow it along. Oh, we've gone through all the doors, and now we're at 3 walls. Okay, search for secret doors, and you find it. So it was kind of fun, but I know this is an older game, and it's not really meant to try to be a full role playing game kind of fantasy experience. And again, it was a lot of fun. Just quick, you're running in there, you're just beating up on stuff. The enemies get harder and harder. It definitely had a couple things where it made it harder on us. Like we had to pass through these little mushrooms. These, like, it was weird. Like, these mushrooms are blocking the door. There's no way through without eating them. It's like, really? Because I got a barbarian with a big axe. You really telling me that 5 foot square of mushrooms we can't clear? But it's the game doesn't give you the option of just hack through it. Nope, you got to eat the magic mushroom, and then, oh, we shrank, and now we don't attack as well. Then another, we had to shrink again, and now we can't run. We lose one of our movement. It's like, oh, okay, it's just kind of these little gates to make it artificially harder for us, but it was fine. You just take in good fun, run and jump and swing at stuff, and we had fun. We got some spells, we got some things. Nobody died. We were looking, nobody died. We had to save the wizard from dying at least one time. I think my barbarian took a bunch of hits, but we got it back. We ended up getting to, I don't know, the necromancer, evil wizard at the end of it, and in fact, the wizard ended up hitting him last, getting that last hit on him and dying them. So it was a good time. And then it turned out that the guy who I was playing, hey, Krister, it turned out that the fellow that I was playing Hero Quest with had their own game, and he said, hey, I've got this game that I'm beta testing, or I'm working on, and I'm going to be demoing it in the other room. If you have a chance, would you like to come down and play? And I said, sure. So I went down and I was looking at Jason's game of that Lonely Mountain, or it's a I guess a Games Workshop, or it might even be Ice game using their Lord of the Rings license from I guess the early '80s or late '70s, somewhere in there. And I was kind of and I was watching him run it for Daniel Merc the Meek and a couple other people and Nikki and a couple other people. And then the guy, then the other guy's table was right there. He's like, "Hey, you want to play this Ragtag Defenders?" I said, "Sure," and it was a lot of fun. It's essentially like a skirmish game, I guess you would call it. We he had a table set up with using a bunch of terrain. He had one hill terrain as a central feature, and then he had like a ruined church feature and a couple other things. And so you had these kind of elevation, definitely different points of elevation with some structures. He put some, I guess some like not tiles. Basically, there were these objectives. He put these objectives down. We were trying to find some kind of evidence of something. I don't remember exactly what the backstory was. We had to find a certain amount of these. So we had to find this evidence, and the evidence was going to be at one of these objectives. We didn't know which one. It was me and another. Actually, it was me and the guy who was the referee in Hero Quest. We were now the players, and the guy who I played with the Hero Quest was now the referee. We had two characters, and the way they do it is you have a main character, you have a lieutenant, and then you have three, like, I don't even know what you call, like, not hirelings quite, but kind of like you have three sort of lower level assistants. I don't know, crew, right? So you kind of got a little party, each of us. I picked this wild or wood elf ranger, and I didn't even know what the other guy picked. And then I picked this tiger guy as my lieutenant, and the tiger guy had as part of his crew these three lizard men with blow guns, or whatever. Blow guns? Yes, blow guns. And we were set up on one side, and then he raid some enemies over there, and they put down the objectives, and then we were off. It was a really fun and fast game. It was very easy to figure out what we were doing. It's like an alpha version of the game, which I think I mentioned this. He's calling it Ragtag Defenders at the moment. You're moving very quickly, and you have, like, I had a bunch of bow abilities I could use. I only really ended up using one. He had a couple. I think there's definitely somewhere you see, to me anyway, where you could see opportunities for him to streamline the game a bit. Hey, Gamers on Games, I did not hear that James Carpio died. Oh, that's a bummer. Though I'm not really familiar with them. Gamers on Games, who is it? Because the name does not ring a bell. It's a very quick game to get going. Moving again using measuring tape. What I liked about it is part of what he was saying, which I thought was really cool, is that he really wants you to take advantage of the elevation things. To get up, get down. He had a push-off mechanic where if you're on a ledge or at the top of the hill with a monster and you get an attack, you could push them off, or they could push you on it. Oh no, Solarian. Oh no. Oh, thanks for letting me know, Gamers on Games. I'll have to look into it after the stream. My condolences to anyone who is familiar with Solarian games or James Capio. That's Carpio. That stinks. Game was fast. Moved well. You used the elevation. Elevation was something that could be used against you, used for you. It made it fun. It was really easy. One of the things he said was he didn't like in games, these kind of skirmish games, in which it was really laborious to get up to a high spot. He wanted to make kind of fast. And it had that. Like, I got my elf up to a high spot, and she's pew, pew, like shooting a lot of arrows, so that was cool. I had my tiger guy running around the battlefield. He had good, when you flipped over an objective, if it wasn't the information, of course, with our luck, it was only the last objective that had the evidence we were seeking. He had different effects. One of them, which was cool, was on the second level of this ruined chapel church thing. The other guy got up there and he flipped it over, and it wasn't what we wanted. So he rolled on some event table. It ended up being that the structure started to collapse a bit, which caused masonry to fall down and hurt one of his other units. As at the bottom was on the outside of the structure. He actually managed to stabilize himself and not fall off or get damaged inside the structure. But it seemed really cool. Like, wow, that's kind of cool. That's pretty neat. Like, oh, this is happening. There was a weather effect, which is a little bit kind of funky. It was like, oh, look, Halo comes, or not Halo, hail. Hail strikes a quarter of the battlefield. It's like what? And, that's a little bit like I don't know. You maybe use something else. Maybe give me a, maybe yeah, give me more of a contextual thing. Like we're doing this in the midst of a battle, and so we have the catapult fire raining down. Something else. It was like why would hail come and then only hit that part of the battle? But still, it was fun and it moved quickly. And I think what I liked about it was that even though our character sheets were just kind of printing out Word documents, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to really slim it down and get it, into a card or something you just have in front of you. We very quickly got up to speed what we had to do, what things took. It seemed like there was no time at all. We're just doing our thing. And I think whenever you're playing something for the first time, and like within a couple of turns, you're just playing and you're not asking a bunch of questions. How does this work? And you're doing a bunch of lookups. That's good. He had one thing I thought was really clever. So he sort of split up the board wasn't technically split up into quarters into sort of in quadrants, but that's how he was treating it in terms of things activating. And he basically used a 10-sided die. I'm trying to see if I have a 10-sided die here. And he would roll the 10-sided die on the table and look for the point, right? The tip. And wherever the tip pointed, that's what would activate. Which I thought was a really clever use. A lot of his stuff was 10-sided die based. I thought that's a really clever use of a 10-sided die. That you roll it on the table and look to where it's pointing, and it's like, oh, that's the thing that activates. I was like, that's really nifty. Really nifty. You know. Sorry, I just need another sip here. A really, really nifty use of a 10-sided die. The enemies were fun. At one point, when there was another one was objectives on top of the hill, and when the guy got to the top of the hill and flipped it over, it was like a wild beast appears, and this big bear showed up and started rampaging through everybody, friend or foe. And we were actually able to kind of use it at some point to kind of sort of maneuver it towards the foes. So it took out a bunch of the foes, and we're running around, and we had kind of an activation where you'd kind of go in sort of turns, and you'd activate. You think you'd be able to activate 2 of your guys on each turn, so you kind of go 2, kind of going around like that. If you're when you defeated enemies, you'd get a currency that you could then spend if you built up enough of them to bring back some of your downed. If any of your allies, your character was down, you could bring them back. Yeah, you earned focus that you could use to add 1 to your rolls. But it all was pretty darn smooth. It was a really fun game. I mean, I think it really is one that requires all the terrain and stuff, which is, I guess, would be an interesting challenge if you're going to market it or sell it, because I couldn't see playing it on a flat surface. It just, I don't know, for me, it's very visual. You want to see, you're jumping up on these things and moving up and down. And yeah, you could probably do it with flat things and just say, oh, I'm up so many levels. But I feel like the game, he had a lot of terrain and stuff. He had the ruined house, and he had this kind of bell that, I don't know, that was on some kind of scaffolding. He had the hill. He had he had some trees. He had that ruined chapel. He had all these kind of buildings and things out on the table, which I felt was really additive to the experience. I'm sure people feel that way with terrain all the time. But I felt like this game really 3-dimensional in that way. I feel like, yeah, the terrain's kind of something you really, really want. And then after that, I was just kind of chilling and hanging out, and just shooting the breeze with folks as they were kind of popping out of their games, and then ended up having dinner with Jason, Daniel, and Merc the Meek, and that was the end of my ShireCon. Then I was just drove back home. I will definitely. I was Brian was kind enough to send me the PDF for this, for Domains and Dominion, or Dominate. Why Domains and Domination, and the Medieval Mercenaries zines. So I got those. I'll look at. I have these from You Can Breathe Now Games that I'll go through, which I also have the PDFs for. Thanks so much for that. This one, he doesn't sell these online anywhere. These are hand painted. Let's pull it out here. Really, really kind of fun. Hand painted. It's only got one, one face. You roll it if there's an X and 6 chance. A 1 in 6 chance, you just roll that. Either you get a blank face or you get the skull. He has them in some different color combinations. I like the gold eyes on the skull. That's kind of what swayed me on that one. I put in someone asked in a comment over the weekend if you're interested in those because he doesn't generally sell them. I think you have to reach out to You Can Breathe Now at hotmail.com and ask about it. I don't remember how much he was selling these for at the con. I don't know how much he sells them for normally, but he will, I presume, sort you out if you're interested in that. As usual, it was a really fun time at ShireCon. I really enjoy it. I really, if you're in the area, especially, I think it's worth driving to. Depending, I don't know what housing. I don't know what the situation is like. I haven't asked Daniel or Jason how much they paid for their lodgings. Like I said, I'm looking up that is right in the vicinity of Studio B. So I just head on over to Studio B, and I'm set. There's also going to be not too far away Arcane Con. Do I have the thing for Arcane Con here? I do somewhere. Hold on a minute. No, wait, do I? Do I have Arcane Con's information here? I thought I did. Hold on, where is it? Well, Arcane Con is going to be in Northampton, Massachusetts in, I think, November 2nd. And it's actually run by, or organized by Brian, by these guys. I don't know what I did with it. I had a card. I don't know what I did with it. And it's not in my ShireCon notebook. Oh, I will probably head over to that one as well. So if you miss ShireCon and you're in the kind of this kind of northeast area, I think Yohai Gal is going to be over at Arcane Con. I will link to it and I will share it about. But yeah, it was a fun time. It's a fun little con. Depending on where you are in the OSR sphere, some of the figures who are attending can be kind of divisive from things that they post elsewhere. But everyone is, very friendly, very welcoming, very open. Just come play some games. I think hang out. I'll definitely be there every time that I can. Really, everything health willing and everything for many, many years to come. Presuming everyone's still running. And it was nice to see a little bit some younger folks there because I think there was one thing I would say is the crowd at ShireCon skews a bit older, but there definitely was some fresh blood, some younger folks in there. So that was kind of fun to see. Anyhow, that's all I've got on that. Really sorry to hear about James Carpio from Solarian Games. I'll have to look up the details on that when I head off screen. So rest in peace. There was also another personality who passed, I guess, very recently, Shauner. I wasn't familiar with them. I saw RPG Grandma's video on it. I guess he was a pretty divisive figure. Seemed to be kind of one of the sort of, I don't know. I don't know if we characterize him as kind of a grumpy sort of guy. I never crossed paths. I never met him, but I definitely saw some things where people were giving some tributes out to him. Obviously, like I said, I didn't know if you had, and it seems like there are definitely people who did have not very fun interactions with him, and then there are folks who obviously had very fun interactions with him. But in either case, a life lost is a life lost. So my condolences to anybody who knew them. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing the rest of the week, but I will be around. Hopefully you will be around too. So whether you watching this now or later, enjoy the rest of your day, night, weekend, whenever. Old man yelling at clouds is the end. Yeah, maybe. I mean, he seemed like an older guy. I mean, he had the look, but I just saw some pictures of him, but I don't know how old he was. But yes, old man yelling at clouds a little bit, I guess, depending on what you have. But I guess he was really into Traveler. RPG Grandma said that he had some really good content on Traveler. He has a channel on YouTube. I think it's just called Shonner, Shonner. So if you want to go check out what he had to say on anything or Traveler, I guess do that while the channel's still up. No idea what's going to happen with that because, like I said, I didn't know him. But, it came across the desk, so to speak, that he passed. And, divisive or not, like I said, you lose somebody, just tip of the hat to them. They were loved, maybe not by you, but they were loved. All right, folks, enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, and I'll talk to you later.